There is a person in your life, or perhaps someone from your past, who made you feel like the world revolved around them. And the strangest part, for a while, you believed it too. You questioned your own memory. You doubted your own perceptions. You found yourself apologizing for things you never did, shrinking yourself to make room for someone who always needed more. And somewhere along the way, without ever signing a contract, without ever being asked permission, you handed over the keys to your own mind. This is not a coincidence. This is not weakness. And it is certainly not your fault. What happened to you follows a pattern so ancient, so precisely wired into the architecture of human psychology, that even the most intelligent, compassionate, and self-aware people fall into it. Because the narcissist does not control you through force. They control you through something far more sophisticated, something that operates entirely beneath the surface of conscious awareness. What they found was a door inside you that was already open, and what lives behind that door is the truth this video is about to reveal. Most people move through life believing that their experiences are simply happening to them, that the world is an objective stage and they are passive observers watching the scenes unfold. They believe that if someone hurt them, it is purely because of what that person did. That if they feel confused, it is because the situation was confusing. That if they feel small, it is because someone made them feel that way. But this is only the surface layer of reality. Beneath every relationship, beneath every emotional response, beneath every moment where you felt controlled, manipulated, or slowly erased, there is a deeper architecture at work, one made not of the other person's actions but of invisible psychological structures built inside you long before that person ever arrived. The narcissist, consciously or not, is extraordinarily skilled at reading this architecture. They sense what you need. They present themselves as the answer, and then, slowly and methodically, they begin to reconstruct the inner world you live in, replacing your self-perception with one they design, replacing your emotional autonomy with a dependency that keeps them at the center of your universe. Most people spend years, sometimes entire lifetimes, trying to understand why they couldn't simply walk away, why reason wasn't enough, why knowing the truth intellectually never seemed to break the invisible chain. The answer is not found in logic. It is found in the deepest layers of the mind, in the parts of you that were shaped before you had words for what was happening. This is where the real story begins. The human mind does not operate primarily through conscious thought. What you experience as thinking, the inner voice, the decisions you believe you make freely, represents only a fraction of what is actually driving your behavior. Beneath it, like an ocean beneath a thin sheet of ice, lies the subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind is not interested in what is true. It is interested in what is familiar. This is the first insight that changes everything. From the earliest years of your life, your mind was constructing a map of reality, recording the emotional patterns of your caregivers, learning what love felt like, learning what safety required, learning what you had to be in order to belong. And that map became your operating system. Now here is where it becomes critical. If your early experiences taught your nervous system that love comes with conditions, that closeness requires self-erasure, that you must earn your value, then your subconscious will seek out, again and again, the environments that confirm that map. Not because you are broken, but because the mind is always trying to complete a pattern it recognizes. The narcissist does not need to break into your mind. They simply knock on a door that was already built. A door shaped by old wounds, unmet needs, and the deeply human desire to finally be seen and chosen. When you begin to understand this, you stop blaming yourself for what happened, and you start looking at the far more interesting question: what was the map, and who drew it? In the early 20th century, Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung introduced the world to a concept that most people still struggle to fully accept. The idea that within every human being there exists a hidden self, a vast unconscious dimension of the psyche that carries everything we have been taught to suppress, deny, or disown. He called it the shadow. Jung observed that the aspects of ourselves we most deeply reject, the parts we were shamed for, the emotions we learned were unacceptable, the desires we buried, do not disappear. They go underground. They become the shadow. And from that hidden place, they shape our choices, our relationships, and our patterns of suffering in ways our conscious mind cannot see or explain. Jung wrote that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. This is not a metaphor. It is a description of psychological mechanics. The narcissist enters the life of someone with a deep and unacknowledged shadow, someone carrying wounds of unworthiness, a hunger for validation, a history of emotional neglect, and they operate directly on that hidden terrain. They do not address who you consciously are. They speak to who you unconsciously believe you are. And because the shadow operates in darkness, you cannot defend against what you cannot see. Jung believed that the path to liberation was not the elimination of the shadow, but its integration, the courageous act of turning toward what you have avoided inside yourself, bringing it into the light of awareness, and reclaiming the parts of yourself that were taken from you long before any narcissist ever appeared. The narcissist was not your wound. They were the mirror that showed you where your wound was already living. To understand how narcissistic control works at the level of the mind, you need to understand the fundamental mechanics of belief systems and emotional conditioning. From a neurological perspective, every experience you have ever had has contributed to the formation of neural pathways, deeply grooved patterns of thought and emotional response that your brain returns to automatically. These pathways determine how you interpret events, how you respond to criticism, how much love you believe you deserve, and how much pain you are willing to tolerate before you call something unacceptable. Narcissists are instinctive experts at identifying and exploiting these pathways. The first phase is idealization, a period in which they reflect back to you exactly who you have always wished to be seen as. This activates your brain's reward systems at a profound level. The neurochemistry of being chosen, admired, and deeply understood by someone powerful is nearly indistinguishable from addiction. Dopamine floods the system. Attachment forms. Then the devaluation begins. Subtle at first. A comment here. A silence there. A moment where the warmth disappears without explanation. And your nervous system, now bonded and dependent on that source of validation, enters a state of hypervigilance, scanning constantly for signs of approval, doing whatever is necessary to restore the feeling of being chosen. This is the cycle of intermittent reinforcement, one of the most powerful psychological conditioning mechanisms known to behavioral science. Unpredictable reward, inconsistent love. Your brain becomes obsessed with solving a problem that was designed to be unsolvable. And through this process, your self-perception quietly shifts. Your identity begins to be built around their perception of you. You stop trusting yourself. You start asking for permission to feel what you feel. This is not love. This is psychological architecture, and it was built inside you, one interaction at a time. Here is the truth that most people never fully arrive at, and it is the truth that will either shake you or set you free. The narcissist could only control your mind because at some level, you had already given that control away, not to them, but to a version of yourself that never fully formed. A self that was waiting to be validated from the outside because it was never taught it could be validated from within. The narcissist did not create your wound. They inherited it. They found a psychological vacancy, a place inside you where your own authority over yourself should have lived, and they moved in. This is the hidden law beneath the entire dynamic. External control only becomes possible in the spaces where internal sovereignty is absent. When you do not know who you are, when your sense of worth is conditional, when your identity is constructed from other people's opinions, when you have learned that love must be earned through constant performance, you become psychologically permeable. And the world will always find someone willing to fill the vacuum you leave. The narcissist is, in a deeply uncomfortable way, a teacher, not a kind one, not a chosen one, but an extraordinarily precise one. because they reveal, with painful accuracy, exactly where you abandoned yourself. Every place they were able to diminish you is a place where you had already begun the diminishment. Every lie they told you that you believed is a lie you were already primed to believe. Every time they made you feel not enough, they were echoing a voice that was already speaking inside you long before they arrived. This is not blame. This is the most important map you will ever read. Because a map can be redrawn. If this has awakened something in you, a recognition, a discomfort, a quiet readiness, then you are already standing at the beginning of something new. And what comes next is not about them. It has nothing to do with them. It is entirely, completely, radically about you. The first practice is radical self-observation. Begin watching your internal responses without immediately acting on them. When you feel the pull to seek approval, notice it. When you feel the anxiety of disapproval, sit with it rather than immediately trying to resolve it. The pattern lives in the reaction, and you cannot transform what you cannot see. The second practice is identity reconstruction. Begin asking and slowly, consistently, who you are when no one is watching. What do you actually value? What do you actually feel? What do you actually want? Not what you have trained yourself to want in order to be accepted. Write it down. Say it out loud. Return to it. Your identity is not given to you by others. It is built through deliberate, repeated acts of self-recognition. The third practice is emotional sovereignty. Learn to become the source of your own emotional regulation. Meditation, breathwork, somatic awareness. These are not trends. They are technologies for returning the nervous system to a state of internal authority. The more settled and coherent your internal world becomes, the less power external chaos has over you. And finally, work with your shadow. Turn toward the parts of yourself you have avoided, not with judgment, with curiosity. The wound that made you vulnerable to the narcissist is also the wound that, when integrated, becomes your deepest source of wisdom and strength. The goal is not to become hard. The goal is to become whole. You are not controlled because you were weak. You are controlled because you were human, shaped by experiences that taught you to look outward for what could only ever be found within. The narcissist was a chapter, perhaps a long one, perhaps one that left marks that will take years to fully understand. But it was never the whole story. It was an invitation, disguised as suffering, to finally go, looking for the self that was waiting beneath every relationship you ever tried to make someone else responsible for. Carl Jung once said that the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely, and perhaps that is the deepest truth in all of this. Because the moment you fully accept yourself, the light and the shadow, the wounds and the wisdom, there is simply no longer any vacancy for someone else to occupy. You become the authority over your own inner world, and what cannot be, destabilized from within, cannot be controlled from without. The mind that knows itself is a fortress no narcissist was ever built to breach.